Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's Security News Update. In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, Cisco is in the news again, not necessarily in a good way. The Five Eyes countries, all of them, issued an emergency directive, and then CISA, our security agency, issued their own emergency directive, giving agencies only until last Friday to patch a Cisco exploit. The exploit is being actively exploited, even according to Cisco, and it rates a 10.0 on the CVSS scale, so CVE scale rather. So not good. If you have Cisco gear, I recommend patching this. And as I said, the government only gave its own agencies like 3 days to go do that, which is pretty quick. That says that they know something that they're not telling us about how widely this is being exploited. In the AI Alerts Department, two items. One is the U.S., the White House is trying to get U.S. allies to use U.S. AI stack, but in the process of doing that, they are rejecting any global AI governance, meaning use our stack, but we're not going to go off and put any limits on the companies. We're not going to make them do anything. Just follow our lead. My guess is that's not going to play well. There's probably some small countries that'll go along with it because they don't really have much of a choice. But the larger countries, Europe, the EU, UK, I doubt they're going to buy that. Just not going to work for them, but we'll see. And then in the big showdown, which has been in the news all week, Anthropic told the Pentagon no, that you cannot use our software for fully automated weapons delivery and bulk surveillance on U.S. citizens. The Pentagon declared them a supply chain risk. Not sure what Anthropic is going to do. Probably take them to court would be my guess. And the reason why this is really, really dicey is that, curiously, hours after they announced that these guys were a supply chain risk, they signed a deal with ChatGPT, with OpenAI. Guess what? It had the same restrictions in their contract that were in the Anthropic contract. So why would Anthropic be a supply chain risk and OpenAI, under the same conditions, not be a supply chain risk? That's pretty interesting. Also, really questionable. The Pentagon apparently had been negotiating with OpenAI all week, even before they made this announcement. So, bunch of interesting stuff there. We'll see where that goes. In the CMMC area, another DoD prime posted its questionnaire to its vendors, gave them a week to complete the questionnaire and submit it. So we're seeing more and more of these primes telling vendors, if you want to play, here's the price of admission. And if you don't want to pay the price of admission, which is significant, I'm not belittling that at all, then you're not going to play with us. In the reference department, the Treasury Department, kind of interesting. I get it, but I don't know where it's going. They release resources on AI use for the financial sector. In particular, that there's an AI dictionary, which is okay, great. A lot of those out there. But there's also an AI risk management framework for financial services. Now, there's no mandate because there's no law that says you have to do that. Whether the government will twist arms is unclear. I'm not sure what they're going to twist arms with. But probably as a general rule, if you're in financial services, it might not be a bad thing to use that risk management framework because you ain't got nothing that's better than that for AI. And even if you're not in financial services, no reason why you can't use that. So all in all, maybe a good deal. There's multiple frameworks depending on where you are in your AI maturity, beginner, middle, and advanced. So there's a questionnaire that you have to complete first, which is pretty simplistic, which is designed just to figure out where you fit. And then they give you the the appropriate set of controls based on where you're at. In the legislative legal department, Step Finance, Solana Floor, and more markets shut down after a cyber attack in January. I think we're going to see more of these. It's just the way it is. They lost, relatively speaking, a small amount, 30 million, but they couldn't figure out how to recover the money, so they shut down. Not sure how hurt people are going to be by this. I didn't look into their excuse me, business model enough to understand how that works, but they're shutting down immediately. In the education department, we get a glimpse of things that we don't usually get a glimpse of. The government issues these subpoenas to big tech companies all the time, like thousands a year, and they're by design mostly secret. But a lot of these subpoenas that Google got, in particular, or some that Google got, were disclosed in the Epstein document dump. So you can kind of see what the government asked for and what Google gave them and what the rules are, stuff like that. So, if you're kind of a legal nerd, that might be of interest. I was going to say if you're a subpoena nerd, but that's kind of too specific. How about a legal nerd? Is this a scam? Moving on to breaches. There's a report of an AI agent that meant to send $4 to a beggar, but instead sent this guy's entire wallet to the beggar. I don't know whether the story is real or a scam. It's a promo for something, no clue. But the message is pretty clear, right? If you give your AI agent the ability to do stuff, you better know what you're giving it permission to do. Because in this case, U.S. law is not your friend. You have no protection under U.S. law. If you give away all your money, that's just a nice gift you give to somebody. The U.S. healthcare diagnostics firm Vicor Scientific, which is now called Vanta Diagnostics, announced a data breach affecting 140,000 patients, and the hackers have published the stolen data. So I'm assuming that it means they did not pay the ransom. And oh yeah, of course, the data was stolen from one of their third parties. Gee, there's a surprise. Car gurus, and they claim to get like 40 million car enthusiast visits a month. Information exposed, and the hackers again published the data. Name, email, phone, physical address, finance application data, outcomes, and other information. Now on to the daily stuff. AI for good. Well, at least some of it's for good, I guess. First of all, a Russian hacker breached about 600 firewalls just using a couple of off-the-shelf commercial AI tools. Now, in fairness, these firewalls were not well protected, but nonetheless, didn't take much apparently. And when one of the AI tools started figuring out what he was doing, he just switched to a different one. But Claude's AI tool, Claude Code Security, found over 500 vulnerabilities just parsing open source code that was in GitHub, publicly visible. So that's pretty cool. And that tool is now available to you. And I assume it's subscription based, you pay for it, but still pretty cool stuff. Cyber growth this year is going to be constrained by physical limits, not cyber limits. And that is the lack of electric power to run data centers, the lack of workers as a result of all of the deportations, and the lack of electric power. Experts estimate that 30 to 50% of new data center construction will be late as a result of that. This could potentially drive prices up. And AI is now the weapon. This is another, again, a single hacker. This is not the same one I just talked about a minute ago. This is a single hacker. He used, again, 2 AI tools, pretty simplistic attack. And the result is, and this is down to Mexico, 9 government agencies across the country were compromised, and 150 gigabytes of personal data was stolen. And I think this is just the beginning of AR wonderfulness. So soon we're going to see a lot more of that. In the security news bites, um, are Waymo and Tesla taxis, robo taxis, really driverless? Not really is the answer. So interesting story in Wired. The latest delivery scam. Um, People pretending to be phone carriers are calling you and say, "Oh, gee, we sent you the wrong phone. Just send it back to us, and we'll send you the right phone." Well, needless to say, you're not sending the phone back to the carrier, and you ain't getting another phone. So don't fall for this scam. This is not a good scam. The question is, how do they get this information? And my suspicion is that they're paying off an insider. So this is an insider threat gig. Um, there is, I think, in my opinion, a simple solution to illegal immigration, but it's being blocked by red states. I'll explain why. So a simple solution is the government has a system called E-Verify. You put in the information about a potential hire. It tells you whether the person is eligible to work in the United States. If they're not, you don't hire them. If they are, you hire them. Pretty simple, right? And most illegals, typically with stolen identities or whatever, fail the test, and so you don't hire them. But the red states are saying, well, gee, it's going to cost us some money to use the system. Well, the system itself is free. So, it might cost you a few bucks to have someone type in the few fields of data that's required, enter it, and look at the answer. But the money isn't the real answer. The big thing is these companies, businesses are lobbying heavily to the government, to the state government, saying, we want to hire these illegals. We don't have to pay them very much, and they don't complain, and they're thankful just to get a job. So as a result of that, many red states are resisting and there's no federal law which requires you as an employer to use these E-Verify system, even though it's free. I mean, I think if you were to go off and say, you know, if you hire somebody and it turns out after the fact that we discover that the person was not eligible by looking at E-Verify, you can go to jail. And I think that would quickly encourage people to go off and use the system. That's just what I'm thinking. But anyway, no one asked me. As I said before, Anthropic tells the DoD no, and OpenAI now says yes. Well, sort of. Same restrictions, but OpenAI now has the contract. Oh, yeah, one of the founders donated $25 million to the president's campaign. So, gee, I'm sure that had nothing to do with anything. Cisco, who's been the whipping boy lately for not being able to get anything done. And of course, they haven't had a Senate confirmed director in a year now. They moved the acting director, the guy who has been being beaten up in the press, to some other probably make work position. And they took another guy from inside the agency and gave him the job to see whether he can make anything happen. Not likely we're going to get a Senate confirmed leader anytime soon because of some politics that are going on there. And CISA, even though they claimed, which is an absolute bold-faced lie, that there's no impact as a result of all these cuts, right? They've lost like a third of their personnel, maybe more, um, and dozens, if not hundreds, of high-level employees. So there's no way that that's not having an impact. They said, "Oh yeah, this guy who just got fired uh, testified in front of the Senate, or maybe it was the House, actually Congress somewhere. Oh yeah, no effect. There's nothing to see. Just keep moving." And nobody believes that. So with that, closing words, we're seeing more and more AI-driven cyber attacks. And if you're seeing one or you're worried about you might see one, now would be a good time to plan for that. I can tell you that the tools that you used 2 or 3 years ago to protect against non-AI driven cyber attacks are not going to work against AI driven just because of the speed that these things move at. So if you need help with that, give us a holler. We'll be happy to see what we can do. And until next time, thanks for listening and home line. Stay safe.